Hello, chefs. This is Chef's PSA Podcast. I'm your host, André. On today's episode, we're going to talk about, is the culinary industry facing a crisis? Stay tuned. I'm recording this episode a little bit early. So today is Wednesday, September 27th and 23. Tomorrow is actually my birthday, September 28th. I hope you wished me a happy birthday, but if you didn't, shame on you. I still expect a present. Go to chefspsa.com. Go get yourself a book, a journal, one of the free ebooks, get some merch, get a happy cook hat, whatever. Go celebrate my birthday by buying yourself something nice. Anyway, the reason I bring up the date is because today on my Instagram, I put up a poll. I put up several polls actually, wanting to take a pulse of what the state of the industry is. Everything from, is the industry harder since 2020? What are your staffing levels looking like? Are your menus too big for the amount of staff that you have to pull it off? What's the skill level like of the current team that you have in the kitchen? And how many jobs do you need to make sure you're making ends meet? So I put that up on Wednesday, and the results are very interesting. And the reason I did that is because I was starting to sniff out that we're having some problems in the industry. This episode is going to be a bit of a rant. I'm not sure if I have any solutions. As I wax poetically, we will find out if I could have some bright insights, but more so than anything, I have concerns, if I'm being honest. I've been pretty connected to the industry as of late in terms of talking to a lot of my chef friends. I've been getting a lot of DMs, and I'm starting to notice a really repetitive pattern. A lot of chefs that I know are burnt crisp. They're bringing up the same issues. They don't have enough cooks. They're getting a lot of pressure from ownership to perform. Their menus are too big. They're working too hard. The hours are too long. Cooks are working two jobs. They're willing to leave for a buck here or a buck there. Restaurants are raising their rates very quickly in order to pull all the cooks from the market, at least all the good ones. Chefs have always worked hard. I don't think that's new. I think I was a chef for a very long time, so 7 days a week then and 7 days a week now, hard is hard. But I think the difference is a lot of the chefs that I'm talking to are not only working the long hours, but it's at a sprinter's pace and they're having to compromise quality. Where before, at least they had enough people where they didn't have to sacrifice the quality. Someone messaged me and they said that they had put in their notice. And this is someone that I communicate with often. We're going a little bit back and forth. So I was asking him the question why he was leaving. He just said, all his cooks have to come in at 4 p.m. The restaurant opens at 5. So not only is he the prep cook, but he also has to set the line for all the other cooks. The reason the cooks have to come in late is because they all have second jobs because one job doesn't pay enough. Which one thing leads to another, which leads to bad service, not enough product, mediocre quality, not something that they're happy with. The hours are still long, but sometimes you could put up with long hours if you're enjoying what you're doing. If you're not as frustrated, you could deal with it, right? It's kind of like if you're playing a video game that you enjoy, you can play it all night. It doesn't matter that you've been playing it for 24 hours. You know, when you were a little kid, you'd play video games 24 hours a day, if not longer. But if you didn't enjoy the video game, all of a sudden, you might not want to play it for 24 hours straight, much less 10 hours straight. Well, that's kind of what's happening in the kitchen. A lot of times, people would say, why did they work so many hours? A lot of chefs enjoy being in the kitchen that long. I know right now, personally, I'm doing a chef in residence program at a restaurant in Dripping Springs. And I wake up in the morning, I get ready, I go to work and I'm there all day. And then I come home, I go to sleep and I do the same thing. And I'm like back in the grind for a short period of time, but I'm fully switched on and I can't turn it off, right? I'm an all-in type of chef. So I'm driving to work. I'm making my notes to talk about when I get there. I come home, I'm thinking about new things. If I have any time off, I'm looking at things that I could incorporate, whether it's the culture, the philosophy, or even on the menu. So there are some chefs like that, just they are so into it, they can't turn it off because it's fun. It's like a video game. They're racking up the high score. But what if it's not fun? If it's not fun, you're not going to be doing that. You're not going to be trying to move things forward. You're not going to be trying to push. And so this guy that I was talking to says to me that he's put in his notice and he's going to leave. He doesn't have a plan. He doesn't know where he's going. He's picking my brain. Where do you think I should go? It's an interesting question because here's what I do know is that not all places are suffering the same. A lot of the smaller independent restaurants may be suffering more so than the big players. A lot of the chain restaurants are suffering, especially those chain restaurants that have massive menus, the ones that have like 50 menu items and like 3 cooks to pull it off, right? And when you have massive menus and a few cooks to do it, one thing has to give, right? Usually the cooks can only do so much. So they're probably going to take shortcuts and compromise on the quality. So I had said to him, as taboo as this sounds to a lot of people, it's not taboo. And I think we have to reframe how we think about this. I said to him, and he's working in a great restaurant. I won't say which one, but he's working in a very top-end restaurant with a big name chef. And I said to him, sometimes you need to take the corporate job so that you can have more free time and you have more infrastructure. You get the benefits. You have more resources. You have a human resources department. You might get the free gym membership, the health benefits, the PTO, all the things that I think are valuable, especially for what today's cooks are looking for. And you could find that in a corporate environment. It's much more difficult to find in an independent restaurant that's independently owned and independently run. But there's a trade-off. And that trade-off is usually you're trading the chef life for quality of life. You might be giving up a little bit of that creativity depending on, if you're in a corporate structure where they're writing the menu for you. It's something that you got to think about, because quality of life seems to be a hot topic. People are talking about burnout all the time, being overworked and underpaid. I'm not really sure how I feel about burnout. I think burnout is a very real thing, and I've experienced it before. But when I've experienced burnout, it's never been in jobs that I like. When I'm having fun at work, I am not burned out. When I'm enjoying myself, I could work there all day long. You're around people that you love. The kitchen crew is just humming. They're like your second family. Don't feel burned out. You're cooking food that you enjoy. Don't feel burned out. Change that situation up. You're cooking with people that you really don't like, people that you don't get along with. You don't like your boss. You're cooking food that you're not inspired by. Burnout. A lot of the burnout has to do with not just the amount of hours that you're working, but the amount of joy that you're getting out of those hours that you're putting in. It's the missing part that not a lot of people talk about, but I think it's equally as important, is you really have to enjoy what you're doing, or if not, that burnout comes on a lot quicker. If you have a chance, you need to go back and listen to Chef's PSA episode 1. And in that very first episode, I talked about the State of the Union coming right out of the pandemic and what we were facing. And some of the things that I had brought up was that during the pandemic, a lot of people left and they found other careers where they could make more money, a side hustle, whatever the case may be. So a lot of people left, which put a lot of stress on the restaurants that were opening. Then a lot of the people that came back were basically playing arbitrage between employers, meaning I'll work here and I'll get a raise, and then I'll go there and I'll get 25 cents more, and then I'll come back and I'll get $1 more. Where previously chefs would say, if you leave, you're not coming back. But post-COVID, they were begging people to come back, even if they had burned the bridge, because they were all desperate for staff. One of the other things is we had promoted many people into positions of leadership, which they were not ready for. But we were desperate. We needed people to lead the teams. So maybe someone became a sous chef or an executive chef that was maybe 2 or 3 years removed from being ready for that position prior to the pandemic. So now here we are, 2023, basically pretty close to wrapping up the year. And where are we? We created a big mess. We promoted people that weren't ready. We're seeing the fruits of that. People were overworked. It was almost like we didn't learn the lesson from the pandemic to streamline the menus and make something that's more cost efficient. Cooks came in with different expectations, right? The industry feels different. I could tell you that for sure. In just 3 short years, the industry feels different. I'm not saying it feels better or worse. I'm just saying it feels different. I can't necessarily put my finger on what is so different about it, but I can tell you it feels different. And if you've been cooking for a while, pre-2020, you know what I'm talking about. And it's very difficult to put your finger on exactly what it is that's different, but it is different. I don't know if it's social media, or if it's the type of food that we're cooking, or if we've lowered the bar. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's definitely not the same. I'm going to share some of the results from the poll that I put up with you. The first one I put up was, is the industry harder now than it was in 2020, or I should say prior to 2020? 81% of the people that voted, yes, the industry is harder now. That got me curious. Why is it harder now? So I wanted to dig a little bit deeper. I put up a lot of questions. The next question I had put up was, how staffed is your kitchen? Are you fully staffed, down a few cooks, or are you desperate? Only 21% said they were fully staffed. Think about that. Only 21%. 21 out of 100 restaurants are fully staffed. That's crazy. That's crazy to think back when all the culinary schools were popping up. like around 2010 to 2015, and you had a stack of resumes and people were doing stages and working for free, and culinary labor was just aplenty. There was a line out the door to work at mediocre places. Now you have some of the best restaurants in the world putting ads on Facebook and Craigslist for cooks and sous chefs. Places where you would have to get tapped on the shoulder to go work are now putting ads. Interesting times. The next question I put up is your menu too big? Only 13% said it could be bigger. 52% said it was the right size. And 35% of the people said it was too big, which I find interesting because I thought that number would be higher, which tells me that some chef owners are putting a lot of thought into the menu and are focusing on better quality, fewer items. But there's a trade-off, right? Because the customer has to understand that too. Some of the best restaurants that people are talking about in the last few years really are sniper specialists. They do a few things very well. They don't have big menus. I'll give you an example. Maybe they're a taco shop or a ramen shop, or they serve this pizza and it's excellent. They don't have 100 items on the menu that are okay. They have 10 that are excellent. I mean, there's a couple of restaurants in Austin that I could think of. Franklin's Barbecue is a legendary restaurant in Austin, Texas. There's a line out the door. People are camping out. And when they run out of brisket, sold out sign goes up. And their brisket is world class, best in the world, arguably. But they only just do a few things, and they do it very well. And then you get owners of other places that think they got to be something for everybody, and they have too many items on the menu, and then it puts a strain on the staff, and then you start to deliver mediocre. Because there's no way you could put out excellent food when menus are, it's just not practical. Maybe you could point to a restaurant that does that very well, but in my opinion, if you want to be a successful restaurant, you got to hone in on your concept and your brand, and you have to deliver that very well. The next question I asked was the skill level of the team around you. Is it better, worse, or the same? 23% said that the team that they're with right now is better. 40% said it's worse. Now think about that. And 16% said it's really bad. So let's call that 56% are saying that it's way worse than it currently was. 21% the same, 23% are saying it's better, right? So a large portion of the chefs and cooks that answered on the poll are saying that the situation is worse. So not only is the industry harder, but the cooks are not as skilled as they used to be before 2020. What happened? I don't know. I don't know what happened. And these are rhetorical questions. I wish I had answers. Like I said, this podcast was going to be a little bit of a rant because I don't know the answers to some of these questions, but I feel like they need to be discussed. And I'm hoping that this podcast starts to open up the conversation. At least it's identifying what the problem is. Because if we want to move the industry forward, we have to understand what the problem is. The last question I had put up on the poll was, how fairly compensated are you? Are you compensated well? You're fine. You get by with one job, or you need to have more than one job to make ends meet. 18% said they need more than one job, and 48% said they struggle. They struggle with what their pay rate is, but they make ends meet, but they struggle a little bit. And only 33% felt that they were fairly compensated, which I thought was interesting because if you know anything about human nature, we could all make more money, right? You give me a $10 raise, I'd like an $11 raise, right? It's just how we're wired, right? We always want a little bit more. At least a lot of us are. Clearly 33% are not wired that way. So as I was looking at all of this, and I'm just trying to pinpoint what the issue is. So it's harder now. Like I said, some of the issues have to do with the pandemic, a lot of people leaving, a lot of the good cooks not coming back. A lot of it feels like we were on pause for 3 years and we weren't seeing improvement. A lot of people left fun jobs that they enjoyed for a little bit more money, right? And then the people that were left behind didn't enjoy them as much and they're no longer fun jobs. Sometimes it's people can't make ends meet financially. Menus are too big. We haven't fully corrected that issue across the board and the industry's harder. I'll share a little story with you. I had quit a job years ago, and one of my best friends and I, we were sitting down and he wanted to quit and I would talk him out of quitting, and then I would want to quit and he would talk me out of quitting. And we were there for each other. Like I said, we were like brothers. I pulled him off to the side and I told him I had quit while he was off for a few days. The thing is when we were having a conversation, the place was screwed up. He understood why I had quit, but he told me, he says, I know this place was screwed up, but at least it was screwed up and we were here together. Like we had each other's back. I remember that hit me pretty hard because he was right. I felt like I was abandoning him as a cook and chef. And you have to think about that. Like the industry is more than just you sometimes. And sometimes things do not get better when everyone starts to jump ship for $1 here or 50 cents there. Sometimes if you're enjoying where you're at and you're enjoying the people that are around you and you care about them, sometimes the bigger decision is to help rebuild the team. It's not everyone's job. Rebuilding the team isn't everyone's job, but it's some people's jobs. It's when the leaders step up. It goes back to that saying, win together, fail together. If you can lift up your team, because understand that when one person leaves, it creates a domino effect. When you leave, you're putting your work on the person that's left behind, and it makes it more stressful for them. And then they leave, and so the other person that's left behind, it's triple the work for them, and so on and so forth. It compounds pretty quick. Sometimes when things are bad, the best thing to do is to not leave if you're attached to the place and you care about the people where you're at, is to weather the storm and get through the tough times. I don't know what we're going to do about this wage situation because it's a real problem. And if you go back and listen to my podcast on food cost management, you should have a better understanding of money. But I could tell you this, it's not as simple as waving a magic wand. I know I see a lot of comments and I read a lot of things where people say, oh, owners are making so much money. It's not necessarily true. A lot of times owners make no money and they keep putting money into the restaurant to keep it open to supply salaries for the staff that is there. I know that for a fact. A lot of times owners don't take home any money and it's a money pit. They lose millions of dollars when the restaurant closes. It's a big investment. And I think a lot of people think that some rich person is putting all their money into a restaurant and the restaurant's making them rich. It's not necessarily the case. I think more people go broke opening restaurants than get rich opening restaurants. There's unicorns, of course. There's always exceptions to the rule, but the majority of the people aren't getting rich off restaurants. They do it because it's a passion project. And if they make money, great. But I can tell you, the majority don't. So we need to look at raising menu prices, but then people don't want to go out and eat. Do they want to pay for what we're serving? I've seen restaurants starting to add a couple of dollars to the menu price to provide affordable health care for their employees. There's restaurants that are doing tipping for the front of the house service teams and culinary teams. There has to be some creative options out there. And I'm not sitting here and say I have all the answers, but I want to begin the discussion because I truly do love this industry and I do love the people in it. I love the cooks, I love the chefs, and that's what Chefs PSA is all about. I'm trying to help everyone win. Well, let me rephrase that. I'm trying to help everyone win that listens to Chefs PSA. If they don't listen to Chefs PSA, fuck them. Anyway, let's keep the discussion going and let's make the industry better. Obviously, it's not a one-person job. We're all in it together. A better industry for all of us. We all win. We all get better. We all make more money. We all cook better food. We're all successful. Anyway, if you want to support the show, you know what to do. Make sure you leave 5 stars. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button and subscribe. Go to chefspsa.com. You get all the books, merge. I just started a Facebook page. I guess I forgot to say that. Look for Chefs PSA on Facebook. I'm on there. I'm posting on there. Don't message me on there. I really don't like using the Facebook app. I have enough apps as it is, right? Twitter, Facebook, Threads, like all these social media apps are a little overwhelming. Instagram is the best way to get a hold of me, or Twitter. I'm on all the other social apps. Let me know what you think of the show. You can comment in the poll if you're watching on Spotify. Thank you very much. See you next week. Hit the porno music.